Hi, I'm Becky Murray from the Socratic Circle, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Mystery of History curriculum and how we've used it in our family independently, and then how we are going to use it in the coming year in a group co-op setting. So I have volume 1, and I have the first edition of it. The second edition is very similar. There were changes in dates and updating of a couple of things, and I think a few extra activities were added on some of the lessons. But from everything I've read, you can use volume 1 and volume 2 interchangeably, which is good to know if you're working in a group setting. So Mystery of History is it's a 4-cycle series of curriculum, very similar to the Well-Trained Mind idea that you do history in 4 chunks and then you repeat it a couple of times as your kids grow. So this is curriculum that was written by a homeschool mom specifically to be able to teach history to children of multiple ages. And so my understanding is the target is like elementary through about middle school, but it's possible to adapt this with some extra things to make it challenging enough to count for high school. And then I've certainly used it with my preschoolers. So my kids currently are going into 4th grade, 1st grade, and pre-K. Last year I had a preschooler, a kindergartner, and a 3rd grader, and we did history together. It was the one subject that we all did together. So I'm going to talk about some of the different things that we did. And then we are actually repeating and doing ancients a second time because we joined a co-op that is starting the whole school on year 1. And so we've had to make a couple of tweaks to the schedule to get it to fit, and it was a time issue. Our co-op only meets for 32 weeks, so we needed to condense the curriculum down, and I'll talk about how we did that and some of the decisions that we made, and then also best practices at home, and then recommendations for what teachers should do in the classroom based on my experience from last year. So the first thing to know, it's a 36-week curriculum. Each week has 3 lessons, has a pre-test and a final quiz, and then each lesson has activities, and it's recommended at the end of every 3 lessons or the end of every week of making timeline cards to put in a timeline. She calls it something else in the book, and I'm blanking on the term for it. There's several different ways to do the timeline. We opted to do a timeline in a binder that could stretch out because I wanted something portable. And so this is my son. This was made by a 3rd grader. So this comes out and is a big accordion, and this file is available for free if you want to print it out and make your own. He made little flip tabs. As we got further into it, he was adding more and more detail. We actually ran out of room on a couple of pages and had to flip all the way down just to get all the detail in. But I found that this was a very powerful tool for him. I would not do that before 3rd grade, maybe 2nd if you have an advanced student. It's a lot of writing and cutting and a lot to put on an individual student. I think for older elementary and for middle school, it's a great tool, and absolutely have them create a timeline. The one thing we didn't do last year that I want to do this year is color code the different civilizations that we talked about. So I haven't decided on our system yet, but I'm going to do everything that relates to ancient Egypt in red, and then everything that relates to China in purple or something. I'm going to see if I can figure out a traditional color that kind of makes sense, or I may just pick something, I don't know. The other thing that we did is we used the history curriculum as learning to take notes, and oh, I have the wrong binder. I thought I grabbed my son's history binder and I didn't. We use the curriculum as narration. So I would read, so last year we did history first thing in the morning, and we would get up, do breakfast, do all of our morning chores. It was usually 9 or 9:30 by the time we sat down to do school. And especially during the winter when the mornings are cold, the kids would make tea. So we'd all sit around the table and they'd have their little cups of tea, and I'd have the textbook, and we'd open it up and we called it history tea time. I would read the lesson, and then with my little two, I would send them to play, and I'll show you in a minute what they played with, while I worked with my older, and we practiced how to write a summary. And at first we did it together, and I wrote it on our whiteboard, and then he copied. And as we progressed through the year, he took more and more of the independence of that, and then by the end of the year, it was just we'd read the lesson together, and he'd grab his sheet and go and do his summary all on his own. And I was impressed. It's the first year we've done those kind of summaries. I was very impressed with how much he retained. So that's a very good skill, and about 3rd grade and up, I highly recommend that you do the retelling. You don't have to do the written part, even just an oral retelling or asking like reading comprehension kind of questions is really, really helpful. So for my little guys, when I sent them to playing, I made up these tubs. And so this is the remnants of our ancient Egypt tub. I'll show you some of the stuff in it. So I have no idea where we got these, but I have a fake plastic rock and a palm tree, and we grabbed them out of something and threw them in there. We have a bunch of clear river stones. At Michael's, I bought the little tubes, Safari Limited tubes kit for ancient Egypt. And so in here, they've got some pyramids. They've got the Sphinx. So this was really helpful on that specific lesson as we talked. That they would then, I tell them, okay, go set up what we just talked about. And so they'd, build their little world and talk about it, and I'd help them remember the events. And that was really helpful in, I guess, into the Romans, when there were a lot of the wars and like one country was conquering another country, like they acted out the little battles, and it really helped them to make sense of who the different people were. And even if they didn't remember all the events, they remembered a lot of names. I also have these cards that my mom gave us. I think they're sewing cards. I think they were from Oriental Trader. I put them in here thinking my kids would sew with them. No. But they did like using them as the backdrops. So there's one for the end of the flood. That's when it's raining. I've got about a dozen more downstairs. And they just used them as storytelling props. We also, for ancient Egypt, used our widgets because they make really good pyramids. In the schoolroom, we also have just basic building blocks. We have Duplos, we have Legos. After about the first 6 weeks, I kind of put it on the kids to figure out what should go in the tub. And so I think at the middle of the year, we had like 3 different tubs going. We had one for Egypt and we had one for China. And then we started to come up with one that was like Greek/Roman-ish. Had a lot of Legos in that one, a lot of Lego soldiers. So that's just a tool that you can use both to keep your kids, your younger ones, busy where you're working with your older ones, but it also, that kind of retelling helps them to remember a lot of the details. And then another piece, oh, here's a couple samples. So this was beginning of the year. This was Adam and Eve. This is, we did together, he copied off the board. So you can see half a page. By the end of the year, so this was Buddha, which I think is, I don't remember exactly where it is. He wrote this one completely on his own. And so these pages and the lap book that I'll show you are an extra thing that you can buy from Bright Ideas Press on their website. It's a digital download, and I'm going to check the name of it because I always call it the wrong thing. It's the Super Supplemental Collection is what I have. We used the coloring pages. There's only one coloring page per week, so I found other free coloring pages just online at various places and had those in a notebook. So while I was reading out loud, my little ones could color. Even my 3rd grader liked having the coloring sheet, and he colored along. And then we did not use the challenge cards. That was a little much. I think we're going to try and use them this year. They're like little trivia cards, just to remember a lot of the facts and the people and all of that. We were doing something different with memory work. And then there's the notebooking pages is what I showed you. And there's one page per lesson, and then I just did blank lines on the back because by about Christmas time, my son was needing more room than the page allowed, and I just made a document and printed blank on the back. So this is called a folder book. I was using the wrong name. I got this actual book at Target at the dollar section, and this is back to school. You can usually find them in packs of either 4 or 6 for a couple of dollars. We have a ton of Blake books around and use them for all kinds of projects. So I found that the easiest. We didn't start until 3rd quarter, and so it's just all these little flip books with fun stuff in it. Things to color, things to glue in. So I had my son do 3rd and 4th quarter in here. If we were going to do the whole year, and I haven't decided if I'm going to have him do 1st quarter and 2nd quarter since we're repeating, he really liked doing that. I printed off a whole quarter's worth of printables at once and cut them apart and just put them in folders. We do all of our schoolwork in folders, so it was just, okay, week 6, grab the folder, all of your pages for your lap book are in there. No, folder book, sorry, I'm calling it the wrong thing. He usually did So we did history 4 days a week. So we would do lessons Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday he would do the mapping or the folder book and the timeline independently. So that's how it worked. So for the coming year, in a co-op setting, things are going to run a little bit different, and that's kind of what I want to address. So from parents who are using this for the very first time, this book really is all you need for Mystery of History. It will give you a comprehensive overview of history. It will help you to teach your student, and I found this to very much be a no prep kind of curriculum. In the middle of winter when things were stressful and I was running out of energy, I could just simply open the book and read the lessons, and it was enough. It really is. There are great hands-on activities in here. We did about one a week. By the end of the year, I was struggling to have the motivation to continue to do them. My kids loved them. So for our co-op, we're meeting 2 days a week. So the lessons are being read at home by mom before kids come to class. And the retelling and the narration should be done before the students come to class, and then they're coming in already knowing what the lesson's about. So class time can be used for things that you can't do at home, and that would be presentations in front of your group, so students can take turns presenting about a particular topic to each other. They could do some extra research, maybe have a little bit, if you're dealing with older students, middle schoolers, you can talk about some of the biases of things. History's written by the winner, so which side was right in a battle. There's some fun things that you can bring in. The co-op is also a time to do the really messy stuff that involve a lot of prep. The favorite one that my kids did was we did shortbread cookies for cuneiform tablets, and they just thought that was the best thing ever. I did that week 1, and then for the rest of the year it was like, all right, Mom, are we baking cookies again? So just kind of trying to one of the benefits of a co-op is that somebody else is doing that work for you, and I'm excited to not have the burden of that kind of prep. We have our reading schedule for the year, and it's simply my job to read to the kids. So if you want to expand beyond Mystery of History, especially if you have an older student who is really into history and just wants to know more, it is so easy to supplement this. First of all, just with books from the library. We go to the library once a week. I always have the list of the history topics. I have the whole printout sheet of, this year it's our reading plan, but last year I just printed out the table of contents. You can get it from the Bright Ideas Press website, and I just knew which week we were on, and so I'd look ahead 2 or 3 weeks and grab books that related to that, and we always had a pile of books down in the schoolroom. We didn't formally read all the books, but the kids would sit and look at the pictures. Sometimes they'd ask me to read it to them. I also use Story of the World just because I like the way it flows, and it's written very much as a story. I found Story of the World very hard to teach from. I was very overwhelmed by it. I think now that I've done the full cycle, I probably could handle it, but Mystery of History is just a whole lot easier to teach. The new thing that I purchased this year is Susan Wise Bauer also wrote, I hope I get the name right, I think it's The Story of the Ancient World, or anyway, it's a parallel book to The Story of the Worlds, but it's written for an adult audience. So the book is much thicker and much longer, and I'm working on breaking out the different pieces to read along with. I don't know that I'm going to read everything to my kids because I've only made it through like the first, I think, 20 or 30 pages. So far nothing is scandalous or inappropriate for kids, but because it's written to an adult audience, I don't know if stuff's going to come up, so I'm going to pre-read before I read to my kids on that book. So if you have any questions about, timeline, that was the other thing I want to talk about. I'm doing the timeline differently from my family this year because I didn't want to make my oldest redo exactly what he did last year, and my younger two aren't quite ready for doing a timeline on their own. So I bought 4 panels of poster board at the craft store. We're going to tape them together like an accordion and do a line of dates across the middle, and then have the kids put in all the different, in the lessons it tells you what you should be adding to your timeline, and I think they call it the Wall of Fame, the different people, the different dates, the different places, and then anything additional that they pull out of our extra readings will also get added. And we have a list of a handful, 4 or 5 literature books that they weren't necessarily written in ancient times, but they were written about ancient times. Like, we're going to read the Children's Homer, we're going to read the Cat of Bubastes, so we'll have those as read-alouds in addition to the textbook. So if you have any questions on Mystery of History, either using it at home or using it in a co-op, please let me know. Oh, final thought. Volumes 2, 3, and 4 are shorter. They're 28 lessons each, and volumes 3 and 4 are actually split, where there's the text with beautiful pictures in it, and then the teacher, like the activities, is separate. So there's the hardcover reader and so I think it's soft cover teacher's book. Anyway, I really enjoy the series. I find it very easy to teach. My kids have learned a great deal from it, and it's one that I highly recommend. So I hope that you have a good school year. If you use Mystery of History, let me know and we can talk about it.